The time is 6:30. I'm going to call to order the Blount County Board of Commissioners agenda meeting on February the 4th, 2014. At this time, please register your presence. And Mr. Clerk, I believe Mr. Green is going to be a little bit late because he is working an accident right now. Mr. Moon, Mr. Hasty are slowly making their way. Mr. Kirby, are you here?
You have 18 present, 3 absent. You have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. At this time, will you please play the emergency announcement?
Before we get started, let me read the emergency evacuation procedures. In the event of an emergency evacuation, an alarm will sound. Everyone should exit the building by way of the nearest stairwell in a safe and effective manner. If the nearest stairwell is blocked by smoke, use the other stairwell. Do not use the elevator. Once you have reached the main floor, follow the exit signs to exit the building and quickly proceed away from the building. Please be mindful of others evacuating and of emergency vehicles.
At this time, we're going to entertain a motion for setting of the agenda, but before I entertain a motion, I have been asked to move item G24, which is the pay increases, from item G2 and move it to its own separate item as G6 without objection. I'm going to do that on the published. Seeing no objection, I'm going to move G24 to G6. At this time, I will now entertain a motion for setting of the agenda as stated. Motion made, motion seconded. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote to approve the agenda as stated.
You have 18 yeses.
The agenda is approved. At this time, we will move for public input of items on the agenda. Anybody wishing to speak to items on the agenda? Ms. King, please come forward.
Linda King with Citizens for Blount County's Future, and I will talk on G6. Our local officials are planning $1,000 bonuses for their employees, costing us over $500,000. The taxpayers already pay $900 per month toward each employee's benefit package, while they only pay $25 individually. That's a luxury you'll find nowhere else. Across-the-board bonuses are like giving all kids a first-place trophy, those that worked hard and those that didn't. That's socialism. In private industry, bonuses are paid from profit, but our government doesn't make a profit. You just spend taxpayer money. If money throughout the year is saved, as it should be, use the turnback toward our $250 million debt, add it to our unfunded liabilities, put it in our emergency fund, or give it back to the taxpayers in the form of lower taxes. Is there a chance you'll ask for a tax increase in June? Use this money to fill the void and reduce that possibility. That would benefit the county workers and the private sector equally. Unspent money isn't there to freely dole out to employees across the board who are doing the job they've been hired to do. Think of the folks on Social Security who may be lucky to get a $20 a month raise, the employees of Ruby Tuesday laid off at Christmas, those unemployed due to the fire at Black Bear or the foreclosed lodge in Townsend, or those laid off from closing Nader's or Foothills Hardware. It's been reported that the unemployment rate has gone up in Blount County. We have a 14% poverty rate. Yet you expect these people to pay taxes so that raises and bonuses can be given to government employees. 11 county officials have decided that their employees deserve more taxpayer money. Must be election year. Did anyone consider surveying the private sector to see how they felt? You'll be asking for a higher sales tax and at the same time giving bonuses. It's a slap in the face to the citizens. Commissioner Samples said in the paper that the employees obviously did a good job last year, so it should be. It shouldn't call for a grand reward as titled in the Daily Times. It just may be that the Budget Committee didn't do their job because less spending should have come from cutting the budgets originally. However, it appears that the minute commissioners are elected to serve in this courthouse, they forget about the private sector and immediately go to work for the bureaucrats in our local government. This surplus money needs to be held for the rainy days ahead. But apparently the mentality is, when we need more, we'll increase taxes. Let's remember where this tax money came from. You didn't hit the lottery. And I ask, Mr. Chairman, if you ask everyone to please speak into their microphones tonight so we can hear that in the audience. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, sir, please come forward. And state your name and what item you're going to be speaking on.
Yes, good evening. My name is Marty Durand, and I live on 3063 Sam James Road. Yes, sorry, I just came from work, and it's part of the kitchen attire. I didn't tonight, but perhaps you could get a chance someday to sample the food at the Gov Grill over at William Blount High School. Okay, I told you my name. Okay, thank you. My name is Marty Durand, and I live in District 4 on 3063 Sam James Road. I'm writing this letter to you and to the Times as a concerned taxpayer. It's entitled Common Sense, a letter to the Blount County Commissioners and taxpayers of Blount County. There are two matters that speak to larger issues that I wish to share with you tonight. The first matter concerns the decision about the sales tax referendum. While many are aware of the fact that the voters as a whole have voted against the tax increase, the respective cities of Maryville and Alcoa have voted for them on their own. The awareness of our county residents living outside either of these city limits to the fact that they will be paying this tax but the benefits will be spent primarily on city concerns is definitely lacking. This commission's voting for another referendum is a vote to once again place an issue in front of many who have a confused opinion on the idea and see this as yet another tax increase. If you are a commissioner from either city, you already have the money. If you are from the county, you either want your voters to share the tax dollars already being charged or you don't. It's as simple as that. The courageous proposal and vote by this entire commission would be to pass the tax increase as an elected body. This way, the funds generated will go proportionally and fairly to everyone. I'm fearful that we have city commissioners who may feel as though the votes have been cast and what's theirs is theirs. The county is on their own. And that's true. The larger issue here is about doing the right thing. That's the big issue, doing the right thing. For the record, I was not in favor of an increase until our first city, Alcoa, passed it. At this point, I felt that all should go along with this and share as good neighbors do. City commissioners are voting on this larger issue, and that's fairness. That's the right thing. The second matter concerns the $2.3 million surplus in the year 2012 and what will be done about it. The proposal to turn back a portion of this to select county employees as a bonus without a preset plan as to how bonuses could be earned is problematic. Why did various departments come in under budget? Good stewardship, or mistakes in planning, or just luck? Are the 2013 budgets responsible, or should they be adjusted down? Where has the money, our taxpayer money gone? Where has it gone specifically? Where did we get this surplus? Let's budget a raise for these employees next year. A bonus incentive plan would be a great idea. However, at this time, our options should be to pay down our debt or refund the taxpayer money that was not spent. Anything else reeks of cronyism. This is a second bigger issue I believe is a drag on this county, and I aim to expose it wherever and whenever it occurs. A month and a half ago, I took out petitions to run for county commission in District 4. They're signed.
Your time's expired. Thank you. Your hat, sir. Anybody else wishing to speak? Seeing no other hands, we will move on to approval of the December 10th, 2013 committee minutes. Motion made by Ms. Lambert. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Wright. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote to approve the minutes of December 10th, 2013.
Give 18 yeses.
The minutes are hereby approved of the December 10th, 2013 meeting. Next is the consent calendar, Section E. I will move for a motion regarding the consent calendar to forward on to the full commission. We have a motion to move the consent calendar forward to the full commission. Do I have a second? Second made by Mr. Helton, motion made by Mr. Moon. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote to forward the consent calendar on to the full commission.
Give 18 yeses.
The consent calendar is hereby forwarded on to the full commission. Next is unfinished business. We don't have any. We will then go to G. We have no budget transfers. Is that correct, Mr. Vineyard? There aren't any budget transfers for this meeting. So that concludes G1. Next is G2. We have 3 items for G2. I'll entertain a motion regarding those, and I believe some of these were already to be moved to the consent calendar. Wasn't that correct, Mr. Vineyard? Let me turn on your microphone, sir.
Which item would you like me to address first?
Right now, we don't have a motion on the floor. I was just asking a general question. I'm trying to recall from last night's budget meeting, didn't we have an item that was to be forwarded onto the consent calendar, or was I mistaken on that?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay, then never mind, then that. We have a motion to move all 3 items forward to the commission. Do we have a second? Motion made by Mr. Samples, second by Ms. Lambert. Mr. Fultz, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We got several $100,000 here. Let's take them one at a time so we can all understand them. Thank you.
So, Mr. Fultz, you're asking that we divide these up, is that correct?
That's correct.
Based upon the request to divide them up, I'll entertain a motion, Mr. Samples, for item G21 for $97,964 to that to full commission. Ms. Lambert, do you still second that motion? The first one for discussion is the $97,906 from the general county, dealing with, I believe it's dealing with the health department program. Mr. Fultz, you're recognized to speak, sir.
Yeah, I'd just like to know what this is about. Can we get a little color on this from Mr. Vineyard? Thank you.
Mr. Vineyard, do you think you can shed some light on item G1?
The state has notified us that we are having this $97,000, almost $98,000 increase in our grant from the state for the health department.
Mr. Fultz, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other discussion on item G21? Seeing no discussion, please vote to forward item G21 on to the full commission.
Give 18 yeses.
Item G21 is hereby forwarded to the full commission. Mr. Samples had earlier made a motion to approve item G22 to the full commission. Ms. Lambert second. Does that still stand, Ms. Lambert and Mr. Samples? Yes. Very well. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on item G22 regarding $53,783.50 for the health department? Mr. Moon, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Same comment I had last night. This request was made to the state concerning the repair of the roof, and if this goes forward, it goes into a capital account, just seeking assurance that it'll be used for the roof. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Recognize to speak, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where's this money coming from? We got $53,783 to repair a roof. Where's it coming from?
Mr. Vineyard, can you provide some light on that question for us?
It's coming from the state of Tennessee.
This is state money.
Yes.
It's not coming out of any rainy day fund account or anything like that.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fultz, does that conclude your questions?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Fultz. Seeing no other discussion, please vote to forward item G22 forward to the full commission.
You have 18 yeses.
Item G22 is hereby forwarded on to the full commission. Next is item G23, $24,295. Mr. Samples had made the original motion. Ms. Lambert had seconded. Does that still stand? Very well. We have a motion and a second. I'll entertain any discussion on item G23. Mr. Samples, you're recognized, sir.
Yeah, I would just offer this point of explanation. This was a vehicle that we had in the Animal Control Service that was being operated by one of our employees who was struck from behind, no fault of hers. The person who struck the vehicle and demolished the county vehicle was an uninsured, unlicensed driver who was arrested at the scene. So we're simply replacing a vehicle that was demolished.
Thank you, Mr. Samples. Any other discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote to forward item G23 forward to the full commission.
You have 18 yeses.
Item G23 is hereby forwarded on to the full commission. Mr. Green? We will recognize you here, Mr. Green, and at this time, that concludes item G2 of budget increases and decreases. Next is item G3, other budget purchasing items. Mr. Vineyard, I show 4 items. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, at this time, I'll entertain a motion for item G31, the records management grant application. Motion made by Mr. Moon, second by Mr. Carver to forward item G31 forward to the full commission. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote to forward item G31 on to the full commission.
You have 19 yeses.
Item G31 is hereby forwarded on to the full commission. Next is item G32, a purchasing resolution for the sale of surplus property. I'll entertain a motion. Motion made by Mr. Lewis. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Lambert to move item G32 forward to the full commission. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote. Mr. Fultz.
You have 19 yeses.
Item G32 is hereby forwarded to the full commission. Next is item G33, purchasing resolution to purchase land. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to forward this on to the full commission. Motion made by Mr. Moon, second by Mr. Carver. Do I have any discussion? Mr. Fultz, you're recognized to speak, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I have the same question. The money, the $300,000 for this piece of land, where is this coming from? Is it coming from the 5th Judicial Task Force funds, or is it coming from one of our rainy day funds?
Mr.
Bender, can you answer that question for us, sir?
Fifth Judicial Task Force funds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bender. Mr. Fultz, does that conclude your questions? Ms. Merle, you're recognized to speak, ma'am.
Yes, are we just buying property, or is there a building there?
This is unimproved property. There is no building on it.
Okay. So my next question would be, if we're just buying property and they're going to be setting up some sort of, I'm not sure what's being set up here, but how are we going to pay for that? I mean, why are we buying the property if we don't have in the budget the money to, I mean, can anybody from that department speak on it, or you?
This is part of their long-range plan to ultimately have a facility that better fits the needs of the organization. They would be planning at some point in the future, when they have funds available, to be able to build the facility that they desire. And you have to start with property first, and they've had a pretty extensive search to find property suitable for their needs. And this is the property they've identified.
Okay. But I think I would like to know more information about it, because is this something that it's already a done deal and we are going to eventually fund a new building? Is it a year? Is it 6 months? Is it 5 years? I mean, I'm not comfortable voting for this because I don't know enough about what it, I think I should have someone speak to it that knows the details of what they're planning in the future. Because I was thinking that the training center would be a place suitable for something like this, but I don't know.
The training center is not suitable based on the information that I'm aware of. The current 5th Judicial Task Force is not located at the training center now, and they deem to have that in a separate location. It's a multi-agency organization that operates independent of the training needs of the Sheriff's Department. And they have their own proceeds that they fund their organization with, and they're using those proceeds to buy this property. They would also use future proceeds to build any facility that they desire to build in the future.
So we wouldn't be funding it. It would be funded
The
out of
intent is not for Blount County to fund it. It is the 5th Judicial Task Force that would fund it,
Okay.
because it's for their needs. We would be buying it in the name of Blount County, but it is paid for from those sources. And we have done the due diligence. The information before you gives you the due diligence that we've performed on the property.
And that was funded out of the task force?
Yes.
money? Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Fultz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One follow-up. I just want to be perfectly clear on this. This money is coming from, there's roughly $1.4 million in the drug task force account. Basically seizure money of one sort or another. And this is coming out of that, not any county fund.
Yes, that's correct.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vineyard. Seeing no other discussion, please vote to forward this on to the full commission.
Give that to you.
Item G33 is hereby forwarded on to the full commission. Next is item G34, a resolution to commit fund balance for capital projects and self-insurance. I'll entertain a motion. Motion made by Mr. Lewis. Do I have a second? Second made by Mr. Kirby. At this time, do I have any discussion? Mr. Moon, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I'd like for Mr. Stallings to come forward and briefly give us an update on where we are on general liability, self-insurance, and workman's comp, if that would, if there's no objection to that.
Mr. Mayor, do you have an objection to that? Mr. Stallings, please come forward. and see if you can answer some of the, just give us an update of kind of where we stand on those insurance items.
Right, I'll just give you a quick general update. Obviously, we function, and one of the capacities we function with in risk management is we're the insurance company for the county for workers' compensation, general liability issues. In 2007, the commission had the forethought to restructure our department. We actually, we had an excess policy of over $300,000 that was of no benefit to the county. We canceled that policy, hired a couple of claims adjusters, and we actually started, instead of risk transfer to insurance, we started managing the claims and doing loss prevention. Since that time, and I've got just some quick numbers, in 2007 when that happened, our loss in workers' comp, our claims loss was about $886,000. This year, our claims loss, total claims loss in workers' compensation was $169,000. In 2007, 2008, in general liability, we were at a little over $1 million, $1,100,000 in claims loss. This year, we were right at $132,000. So about $1.7 million difference there. That's the good news, that we've been able to get our claims down. We've been able to manage that well. And just saying, we've done that. During that time, we eliminated one position and we reduced our budget by 32% in the department. However, it appears that the funding to those funds was not appropriate for a long amount of time. And that is why that is what you're seeing on the resolution. It's not a claims cost issue, it's a past funding issue. Just simply, we didn't fund the accounts properly.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Stallions? Mr. Fultz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has come up before, 2011. We had lots of discussion, hours of discussion on this. And frankly, my impression was at that time that this problem had been handled. I followed up with a question about a year ago to Mr. Vineyard when he was moving money around to these accounts. And I asked him specifically whether these accounts were in good shape. And his answer was that they were. That's 1 year ago. And now, today, we're looking at taking $800,000 out of a rainy day fund to shore up this fund. Something doesn't add up here. You're telling us that the experience has been good, but we're plowing another $800,000 into this fund. These numbers don't make sense to me. If our experience is so good and we've had all of this good, why are the auditors requiring us, and Mr. Vineyard has said that we may have an audit finding if we don't shore up this fund with $800,000. This doesn't make any sense. I think we need a much better understanding of this problem. We thought we solved it in 2011. Obviously, we didn't.
Mr. Fultz, do you have a question for Mr. Stallions?
No. I'm trying to get to the bottom.
Well, if you don't have a question for Mr. Stallions, then I'm not going to have him standing up here while he's up here. Does anybody else have a question for Mr. Stallions? Mr. Stallions, thank you. Mr. Fultz, I'll return the floor to you. I didn't want Mr. Stallions to be standing up here if there wasn't a question for him.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This just doesn't make sense. You're telling us experience is good and we got to put another $800,000 into it. If we're going to put another $800,000 into it, that tells us that we have not been adequately funding it. And Mr. Stallions just told us that. That means that we're going to have to increase the contribution that every department's budget is making to this fund in the next budget. And I would like to know how much is going to have to be added to the next budget so on a running basis this fund stays solvent. That question is addressed to Mr. Vineyard.
The fund that we refer to that accounted for all the activities of all the self-insurance activities, which would have been health, workers' compensation, and general liability, was all accounted for in one fund. So from a cash perspective, total liability perspective, total asset perspective, all of that looked fine. That remained, that was done when I arrived here and up through this past audit, 2013, June 30. The issue is the funds can no longer be reported on a combined basis, and beginning this fiscal year, they have to be reported on an individual fund basis. The requirement to report them on an individual fund basis by the Comptroller's Office tells us that we have to catch up that past underfunding on an individual fund basis so that we can continue the self-insurance program. If we do not do that within a 3-year time frame, and I, for one, can't recommend to you that we do it over 3 years, the $800,000 would allow us to catch it all up at one time. Then, as you refer to, on an ongoing basis, operationally, it would lessen any surcharge or any other additional premium we would charge each department on an operating basis.
Well, let me just go back, because in 2011, your predecessor did not, he broke them apart too for the purposes of this discussion in great detail. And we were asked to put $900,000 at that time into general liability workman's comp. Okay, that was the discussion in 2011. You can go back and look at the tapes. Now, if this is underfunded, has been underfunded, and we shore it up right now with $800,000, but continue with the same level of funding, we're going to be working our way through that $800,000 again, because we haven't raised the premium to properly finance this insurance fund over the long term. And my question to you is, how much are we going to raise the premium on all the different departments? What's the total to adequately fund this operation?
The $800,000 would catch us up, as I said earlier. We would have set new rates. We have the new rates. I don't have the difference on here. But there would be an increase in the FY15 budget that we would propose to you. So it's not leaving the rates at the current structure.
Okay,
The premiums
so my
would
question
be
to you,
increased for next year.
my question to you is, how much are the rates going up? How much money are we going to have to find in next year's budget to adequately fund this?
As I just told you, I don't have the difference in front of me. I have it on a per employee basis.
Okay,
by
fine.
grade.
Can you have it for the commission meeting?
Sure.
Thank you. I will point out to the citizens that this is just another item in next year's budget that's going to have to be funded from something. Thank you.
Mr. Moon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question, Mr. Chairman, for Mr. Vineyard. Could he give an estimate of what it would cost to take our general liability or workman's comp or both to the market and buy policies versus the way we're handling it now?
Mr. Bender, you think you can answer that question or provide some insight?
I don't have that, but Mr. Stallions does.
You didn't think you were going to get off that easy, did you?
We looked at that. We went through and did a comparison. Is it last year, year before last, on what it would be if we went outside, if we went to fully insured, if we went to a pool, or if we stayed. We actually took the numbers that we had and showed the savings that the county shows from their claim loss. An insurance policy pretty much is going to be 70%. They're going to charge you 70% to pay the claims. 30% is what they put in their pockets. When we did a soft, we just had our broker go out and just kind of test the market and see where we were at. We actually got back from the market that right now that we were not a good option to be fully insured. So it was a polite way. We got no responses back on general liability. We do have an excess policy on the workers' compensation, but we're fully insured on the general liability.
Mr. Moon, continue.
Mr. Chairman, so I'm clear, you're saying it would be at least 30% above what the claims are?
That's your general rule. They're going to look at our claims and then they're going to add in, they're going to look at what we paid and they're going to add in their profit.
Thank you,
Mr. Fultz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've combined two things here. We also have $545,000 that's for capital improvements. Again, we're signing a blank check here. We're being asked to appropriate $545,000 for, quote, capital improvements. And so far, we've seen no list of what those capital improvements might be. That's a blank check. Are you going to make us smarter about that, Mr. Vineyard? Do we have a capital plan?
I don't know that I can make anybody any smarter, but I can shed a little light on that. You're not being asked to appropriate a nickel, let alone $545,000. What we're asking you is to earmark $545,000 of fund balance to be spent on capital items at some point in the future, hopefully soon. We have a lot of needs. We're trying to get departments and office holders to help compile the needs that we have, and this just earmarks a funding source for that at some point in the future. Any and all appropriations would be brought back to this body as well as the capital list before we do anything. If you'll recall in our financial statements, fund balance has categories. We have an undesignated or unobligated amount of money that's our rainy day fund. But we also have an additional 2 buckets that are committed funds or funds that are earmarked for other needs, whether they be purchase orders or contracts that we're already obligated for, but they've not been paid out. Those monies haven't been spent, but they are obligated. And all we're suggesting here is this would be a good faith effort on the part of the county to demonstrate to the rating agencies and the capital markets that we are trying to plan for the future what our capital needs are and have a source of funding other than debt funding to be able to meet some of those capital needs.
This still smells like a blank check. Why don't we do it the other way? Why don't we come up with a capital plan for and thoroughly examine our needs and then move the money to this fund, whatever is appropriate? I don't understand this business of we're going to move the money, we don't know what we're going to spend it on yet, but we're going to move it so we look good with the rating agencies. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Mr. Fultz, are you asking a question or are you just making a comment?
Both.
You're not moving any money, and we're not asking you to move money. This is merely earmarking a portion of our reserves to be spent on capital. If I may give you an example, had we had this in place, this would have been a perfectly logical source of funding for the totaled vehicle that we just addressed earlier. We have no source like that now other than reserves. And we would come back to you every time for a reserve. All we're saying is we want to earmark at some point a cap funds that could be transferred with your approval at a future date to be put in a capital fund and be spent on capital needs. That's all we're saying.
Well, you're going to move it from from a rainy day fund to a capital account. So we are moving money.
No, sir. We are asking you to earmark it in this resolution only. That's it. I'm telling you, in the future, we would come back to you and ask you to appropriate that money or some amount of that money to a capital fund for specific needs that we would bring to you.
Why don't you bring us the needs, and then we'll... the business-like way to do this is to come up with a capital plan and then make these kind of moves. Thank you.
Seeing no other discussion, please vote to forward this on to the full commission.
You have 18 yeses and 1 no.
This item is forwarded on to the full commission. That concludes items for G3, budget and purchasing items. Is that correct, Mr. Vineyard? Next is item G4, resolution for levying an additional sales and use tax for Blount County. At this time, I'll entertain a motion regarding that resolution to forward on to the full commission. Motion made by Mr. Kirby. Do I have a second? Second made by Mr. Melton. Do I have any discussion? Mr. Fulcher recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Property taxes, wheel taxes, sales tax increases. This commission has spent far more time talking about ways to increase taxes than it has ways to cut spending. Is that what being a Blount County Republican is all about? I hope not. Thank you.
Ms. Merle, you're recognized to speak, ma'am.
This is going to go out for vote again. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is this going to cost us any extra? Because we did just vote on this. I mean, we just voted on it, and the people told us what they wanted.
It's my understanding that this would be put onto the regular ballot, on the primary ballot that's going to be on May the 6th. So there would be no additional funds to place this onto the ballot. It would just be part of the ballot with everything else.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Kirby, you're recognized to speak, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Went through 2 sales tax elections. Went through 2 more. The city of Alcoa residents and the city of Maryville residents got smart. They want to fund their schools. They want to fund their borrowing money and so forth. So you read the paper of what they're going to do with their half cent. They're going to shore up their things that they've let go, just like we've let things go. We've let things go in our schools. We've let stuff go in our buildings. So we're going to come to City of Maryville and City of Alcoa, and we're going to spend our half cent. We're going to give it to them. And we're going to vote it down, and they're going to laugh at us for doing that. Well, we don't have to do that this time. We're going to vote this half cent sales tax in, and we're going to use it for our school, and we're going to use it on our debt. And that's what the people in this county needs to do, and that's the right thing to do, and that's why I'm sponsoring this motion, and I'll be the #1 vote, and if I can get the vote #1, I'll be the one that votes.
Sorry, Mr. Kirby, go ahead. I'm going to remind the members of the audience to please refrain from any outbursts. We've had that happen a couple of times now with different speakers. Please maintain composure. Mr. Farmer, you're recognized to speak, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to address just a couple of things. This is something that it has been voted in by the City of Maryville. It has been voted in by the City of Alcoa. Approximately 88.2% of every dollar spent in Blount County is spent within the confines of those 2 city limits. The citizens in every one of our districts are already going to be paying this. You buy your groceries in the city. You buy your clothes in the city. You are already paying this. No one likes to say, I support a tax. This is the thing. This isn't a matter of supporting it. It's a matter of agreeing to share in it. We're already going to pay it. I paid it today when I ate at Cracker Barrel. I'm already paying it. And I will continue to pay it if I choose to buy anything within the city of Maryville and the city of Alcoa. This isn't about a tax increase per se. This is about sharing in it. Furthermore, I want to address what was brought up earlier. This body cannot vote in a sales tax increase. By law, it must be on a referendum. This cannot be done by this body. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Lambert, you're recognized to speak, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I ask, isn't there supposed to be a time span between when these issues come up repeatedly? I know in Sevier County there was it's a 2-year time period before the same issue can be brought up again.
I don't have the answer to that question, Ms. Lambert. Does anybody on the board have, hold on a second, Mr. Moon, you're recognized to answer the question posed by Ms. Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. TCA is 6 months. 6 months. Go on the ballot every 6 months. Now, I don't know why anybody would want to bring it on the ballot every 6 months. 2012 was the last time it was on the ballot, sales tax. It's every 6 months.
Thank you, Mr. Moon. Mr. Hasty, you're recognized to speak, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To address some of the statements that have been made about being a conservative Republican in Blount County, I think it is our job to be conservative and think about the taxpayers' money. At the same time, this has passed in both cities. While each of us, I know in my district, I have city and I have county residents and people that have elected me. I think it is our job that it's a done deal. It has passed. Whether we agree with it or not, it has passed. I am willing to give the citizens of my district the opportunity to say, do you want a part of that money that you're spending? Whether you like it or not, you've done spent it. And I think that that's why we should vote yes for this.
Mr. Lewis, you're recognized to speak, sir.
I would just pretty much agree with the rest of the commissioners who have spoken in favor of putting this back to the voters, and just reiterate again, this is a tax we're all already paying. This isn't a matter of going out and levying a tax on dollars that we're spending inside the cities. We're already doing that. The city of Maryville and the city of Alcoa are getting the benefit of that, and the county is not. To me, it would be irresponsible for us not to do this. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Green, you're recognized to speak, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I may look at this a little wrong, but the way I studied it and looked at it, I'm not voting for it or against it, just putting it out there and letting the people decide what they want to do. This is the first time it's come before us after Maryville did what they did. And I agree that I hate to give all that money to Maryville and Alcoa, but we're just letting the people decide. If they decide for it, good. If they decide against it, that's what they decide. So I think we ought to put it before the people and let them make a decision.
At this time, seeing no other discussion, not missing anybody, please vote to forward this on to the full commission. We're discussing the resolution for levying an additional sales tax for Blount County.
You have 16 yes, 2 no, and 1 abstain.
The resolution is hereby forwarded on to the full commission. Next is item G5, the annual adjustments, financial assurance agreements for Alcoa, Maryville, and Blount County. I'll entertain a motion. We have a motion made to move this item to the consent calendar. Do I have a second? Second made by Mr. Carver. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote. Mr. Fultz, we just need your confirmation.
You have 19 yeses.
Item G5 is hereby forwarded to the consent calendar. At this time, I will entertain a motion regarding item G6, the resolution to appropriate $543,892. Do I have a motion? Motion made by Mr. Kirby. Do I have a second? Second made by Mr. Moon. Any discussion? Mr. Fultz, you're recognized to speak, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question from Mr. Vineyard. Does the current budget provide more money for salaries than last year's actual spending? And if so, how much?
I don't know.
Could you have that available for the commission meeting?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. This item proposes to use more than $539,000 of county rainy day fund to provide $1,000 bonuses for general county employees. Now, I will say that I took a quick look at the budget, and I found that every department has more money to spend on salaries in the current budget than they actually spent last year. And not just 1%, several percent more. So there's already money in the budget for increased salaries. These bonuses are in addition to that. I wonder whether our taxpayers can really afford this. According to the audit, the county's debt is still more than $220 million. That's as of last June, per the audit. By far the highest of any similar county in Tennessee, far higher. According to the audit, we hear all kinds of talk about how we had extra money. We didn't have any extra money. We had extra money in one fund last year. If you look at the total budget last year, the county spent $6 million more than it took in. That's per the audit. So we spent $6 million more than we took in last year. That's the fact. In addition to the $220 million in debt, we also have an unfunded liability for medical benefits for our retired employees. That's $19 million. You got to add that to your debt. So now we're up to $239 million worth of commitments, and we're deficit spending to the tune of $6 million last year. We don't have money rolling all over the place. And that doesn't include this $500,000. This year, the current budget is in deficit by at least $4 million. And now we're going to add another $500,000 to that. And this Insurance, shoring up the insurance program is going to add to that. Doesn't anyone see a problem with proposing more than $1.5 million in bonuses for county employees on the very same night that we're talking about imposing another major tax increase on our oppressed citizens? This whole thing doesn't make common sense. We're handing out bonuses and deficit spending at the same time. It doesn't pass the common sense test. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Moon, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd ask the Budget Director if he can illuminate or shine some light on this matter.
I'm trying to discern the difference in if there is an issue with budgeting for salaries, or as the reference has been made on more than one meeting I've attended where people have made reference to the private sector paying for money, giving raises out of excess, or while we don't in the public sector recognize profit. To me, common sense is if you don't budget for salary increases for your employees, it is logical to me, and maybe my logic is different from everyone else's, that if you had a positive result in your year-end operations, it makes sense to me that you give part of that to your employees if you budgeted no raises for them. Now, I don't know if that illuminates anything, but that's my personal perspective.
Mr. Moon?
Thank you, Mr. Vineyard. Why was the decision made to ask for a budget amendment in lieu of one-time expenditure in lieu of going ahead and giving raises? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have a county governments, by their very structure in Tennessee, are made up of silos, unlike many municipal governments. Doesn't mean it's good, doesn't mean it's bad. It just means you have to operate and function differently in respect of those who are elected office holders. They have constitutional requirements that go with their respective offices. What we're trying to do is to, and I've heard numerous comments made to this effect, and I share, we need to make improvements. And I think we've made strides with our office holders and department heads. I think this is a way that we demonstrate some good faith, that if you do a good job, you're going to get rewarded for it. We have budgeted one increase in compensation, best I can tell from our records, in at least the last 4 years. Maybe 5, and that was in the form of a one-time salary adjustment and did not have any recurring cost to the taxpayers. This is the same thing. It's a one-time salary adjustment, has no recurring cost. Comments have been made about what's budgeted, what's not budgeted. We tend to use the argument for whatever benefits our perspective. All we're trying to do, and I can tell you it's professionally embarrassing to me that I can miss a projection by over 5% on our budget. That embarrasses me. But we are trying to improve that process this year. And part of that process is the instructions we gave all of our department heads and our elected officials the other day. The better job we do on fine-tuning where we think we will end June 30 this year would help determine what might be available to plan for pay raises in the future. Again, I don't know if that sheds any light or not, but that's what we're trying to do, is a better job.
Thank you, Mr. Vineyard. Mr. Kirby, you're recognized to speak, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's a question for Mr. Vineyard. I'm understanding on the Budget Committee, the money will not be allocated to the office holders, but it will be put in the payroll system to each individual. It won't be put out to the office holders to give this one more, that one less, everybody will receive the same amount of money through payroll. Is that correct, Mr. Vineyard?
That is correct.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Samples, you're recognized to speak, sir.
Mr. Vineyard, could I ask this, if these one-time increases are given, that will not reflect on their base pay for the next year, will it?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Farmer, you're recognized to speak, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Vineyard, just a couple of quick things. As I read from the attachments, we're talking about 446 full-time employees and 16 part-time employees. Obviously, that's not all county employees, correct?
That is correct, sir.
Also, contained within that, if you look at it, if you simply do 1,500 for the part-time, it does not come out to this amount. Would you care to elaborate what the line items are that are also included in there?
We've included all the employer benefit costs associated with that.
Correct, which shows 201, 204.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Mr. Fultz, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We tend to confuse ourselves. The simple fact of the matter is that we have budgeted more money for salaries this year than we budgeted last year, all apart from this bonus. And if the office holders so desire, they have the money in their budgets to grant salary increases. And the whole idea that no one's gotten a salary increase in years, if you go down the salary run, and I have, if you go down that salary run, you find that many of our county employees have done quite well in salary increases. Not all, but many. If you compare several years ago with last year's salary run, you can see it. So we're laboring under some myths here. Nobody's gotten a salary increase in years. It's not true. It's just not true. And that there's no possibility of giving anybody a salary increase if we don't give these bonuses. That's not true either. There is money in the budget. There's more money in the budget for salaries than was actually spent last year. Those are the facts. So let's not make decisions on myths. Thank you.
Mr. Hasty, you're recognized to speak, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Mr. Vineyard, please. Is it okay to ask?
Go ahead, ask Mr. Vineyard the
Mr.
question.
Vineyard, you said, I forget, to one of the other commissioners that this was going to be, each employee would be granted this money, and each office holder would not give more to one than the other. And you said that was correct. Is that a gentleman's understanding, or can that be done?
The resolution is crafted with clear parameters, and if commission were to approve this on tonight and the 20th, the information that you have in front of you literally gets dropped out of a spreadsheet into the payroll system, and those people paid directly. And if I've made any statement that indicated no one has ever gotten a raise in the last 4 or 5 years, that is correct. There have been raises given to employees in different departments. I am speaking solely to any across-the-board treatment or equity treatment for all employees. That's all I'm talking about. I'm not singling out any department. I'm not singling out any individual. I'm talking about all across-the-board activity.
And you know my concern is that, you know, I know the citizens elect office holders and trust them. I would hate to see something like this that's being done in good faith, where one says, I'm going to give you 2,000, I'm going to give you none. And that's the part that I would like to see and be guaranteed that if this is across the board, it's across the board.
And that's what it is.
Thank you, sir.
I cannot speak for what any office holder might do other than this. This was shared with all the office holders, and all of them, if you have seen in the packet, have signed off on this.
Any other discussion? Ms. Merle, you're recognized to speak, ma'am.
I hesitate to speak because we do have such wonderful county employees, but they are not the only people that work and pay taxes in this county. And I am against discretionary bonuses, and that's how I see this, is that one section of the workforce in the county is getting a bonus, and everybody is paying into that bonus. So the only time that I have ever known bonuses, and because I am in the sales field, is in the sales field. When you make a goal, you get a bonus. And to just divvy out money, and we're talking about very good people, and I know they deserve it, but it is not something that we should set an example and start doing. And I hate to say that, but I cannot support this. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote to forward this on to the full commission.
You have 14 yeses, 3 noes, 2 abstain, and 2 absent.
Item G6 is hereby forwarded on to the full commission. At this time, that concludes our new business. I will now entertain public input of items not on the agenda. Ms. King, please come forward.
I'm Linda King. Thank you, Ms. Merle. I think you're right. Bonuses are supposed to be individually earned, not handed out on a socialist way of doing business. I have a follow-up from a question I asked last night on bid proposal 2013-2256 for HR and payroll service. I was told that it was for outsourcing work that has been done in-house. When I asked if it would mean cutting employees due to lessening the amount of work required of our staff, Mr. Vineyard stated that he had 2 upcoming retirements, so I think that I was then to assume that these positions would remain unfilled and replaced by an outside contracting firm performing this work. However, if I'm not mistaken, I later recalled that more money had been allocated to the payroll line so that Mr. Vineyard could hire new replacement employees to be trained before the retirements occurred. That said, have not additional new hired people been added to this department? I would like a response, please. Well, we did speak back and forth last night at the budget meeting, so this is just a follow-up. He's not a member of this committee. And you can't ask him that question? I'm not going to ask him that question because he's not a member of this body. Okay, so we don't know if 2 new people have been hired. And also going to pay for an outside outsourcing. No one is aware of that situation. Okay. I do recall that he was introducing some new employees. That's why I thought they were to replace the retirement people. That's why I was questioning. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, discussions of items not on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Do we have any, let me see if we have any notices or comments or announcements. Commission meeting will be on February 20th in this room at 7 p.m. The Education Committee will be February the 13th at Blount County Schools Central Office. I do not have a time for that. Does anybody know the time? 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock noon? Noon on February the 13th at Blount County Central Office. Any other announcements? Seeing no other announcements, I'll entertain a motion to stand adjourned. We are adjourned.